Episode 5, Shadow Warrior, is the first episode directed by Dave Filoni of Ahsoka, and wow, does it show. Like, really show. Before I go into anything else, I'm giving the spoiler warning. If you have not seen this episode, it's a big one, and you should see it, because, whew, I'm not going to go into anything just yet. We'll get there, of course. But yeah, spoiler warning. Make sure you watch this episode. Just watch it. Don't even listen to me spoiling it for you. Just watch it. Also, I will say that this review is shot before episode 6 releases. That is also due to some personal stuff going on in front of my building this week. But the thing is, I have not seen episode 6 when I'm recording this review. So I'm recording this as if this is the latest episode that we saw. So I usually start these reviews by stating the runtime that the episode has, not including recap and end credits, of course. And this is actually the second longest episode of the season so far, with 44 minutes and 25 seconds. Still, it flew by. When it was over, I was like, I want more, but that's more so because I'm really enjoying it. But it was nice to have a longer episode in comparison to episodes 2, 3, and 4. So the episode actually starts out on Cedos. First, a couple of shots, essentially to slowly build up to what is to come in this episode. And then we see that Hera has landed the Ghost, and also the other X-Wing pilots who are still alive have landed. And Hera is like looking what's going on. At one point, Jason and Chopper are like, can we come out? Yeah, you can come out. And then they encounter Hu Yang, who is just heartbroken. I mean, it was heartbreaking for me to see. When we saw Hu Yang with Sabine's helmet, I was like, oh no. Of course, we know that they're okay, but just seeing him like that, a droid that is that old to care that much, I was just like, oh my God, this really means something. And yeah, for them, they have no idea where any of them are. So what a start to this episode already. Like, it's just like, what is to come, really. I do want to point out one thing that I noticed in this episode before I get into the entire World Between Worlds thing. I noticed that Jason actually has a little shoulder patch on his right shoulder, which is kind of like what Kanan had in the first 2 seasons of Rebels. Of course, after season 2 of Rebels, Kanan got a different look and they changed it, and he didn't have that shoulder patch anymore. But I think that shoulder patch that Jason has is like an homage to Kanan, which is very nice. But of course, what we were, I think, all looking forward to in this episode is see Ahsoka and Anakin in the World Between Worlds, because I was like, what will happen there? I had no idea, and I love having no idea. I love to just dive into it and be like, Dave Filoni, give me what you got, because I know it's going to be good. And wow. First of all, I have to say about Hayden, he looks perfect. The look, of course, in terms of the outfit, the hair, but also the way they made his face look. I don't know what they did exactly. I think they did some kind of de-aging CGI, but it looks really good, and it looks way better than the end of episode 4, because I was quite critical of that at the end of episode 4. But here, it's like, no, that is Hayden from Revenge of the Sith from 2005. I fully believe that. Like, wow. Also, in my last review, I was trying to explain the World Between Worlds, and I didn't do a particularly good job. But since then, I think I figured it out a little bit more. This is going to be a little bit of a lengthy explanation, because I'm going to go all the way back to Clone Wars. If you don't want to hear that, you might want to skip ahead a little bit. But my explanation for the World Between Worlds is essentially back in the Clone Wars, at some point, there was an arc called the Mortis arc. It's actually one of my favorite arcs ever since I saw it for the first time. I thought it was a great arc. And what I love about it is the entire mysticism of the Force, and the fact that actually the Force is really difficult to understand at times, because Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka go to this place called Mortis. And Mortis is a place where time doesn't seem to go by as it usually does. Because at the end of the arc, they get contacted by Rex, and Rex is like, oh, we just lost you for a moment. Like, nothing really happened. So a lot happened, but nothing happened. But yeah, it's weird. So the thing is, on Mortis, our main heroes encounter 3 people, the son, the daughter, and the father. And those are 3 gods, essentially. The way that they have certain powers in the Force, they're able to make certain things happen, is unlike anything we've seen in the Force. And they're essentially for Anakin, But yeah, Ahsoka and Obi-Wan are there with Anakin. And I think that is where the connection of all of this starts, especially Ahsoka's connection with it all. Because at the end of it, the daughter, the one of the Mortis gods, actually gives up her life to save Ahsoka. So the daughter is living through in Ahsoka, and therefore I think that connection is what is carrying on, and therefore why she is in the world between worlds right now. And this is even more confirmed in the episode of Rebels, where we first see the world between worlds, because the Mortis gods are on a mural where Ezra goes into a wall that is created by them. And this is on the Force Temple on Lothal, where they have also spent time in seasons 1 and 2 of Rebels. And I just think it's a really clever kind of plot device that Dave Filoni made to make sure that Ahsoka can be saved. Because also in that episode, she gets saved by Ezra. She's fighting Darth Vader, and Ezra pulls her into the world between worlds, saving her life effectively. And it just seems to me, because of her connection with the Mortis gods and the daughter, that is why Ahsoka is able to find this place, and that place is then able to save her life in a way, and even teach her lessons, as we see in this episode. So that is, I think, what I can say in terms of what I think the world between worlds is and why it appears to Ahsoka as it does. Let me know in the comments if you agree with that. But I personally really love this place. I think it's a really clever place that Dave Filoni came up with in the Force. The way that it's able to connect to all these things, like I even have the opinion that it connects to the cave on Dagobah in The Empire Strikes Back. And I think it's just good writing, I really love it. So Ahsoka and Anakin get to talking. Anakin calls her old. Ahsoka says that Anakin looks the same. Well, yeah, as I already stated, I think the de-aging, whatever they did, looks really good on him. But what I also just love is having Hayden back in a role where he's written well, because I am not a critic of Hayden Christensen in the prequels. I think that he's actually doing the best he can given a not so good script and not so good direction most of the times. But the moments that he doesn't have any lines really, and he's just staring very menacingly, I believe him. It's like, oh, wow, this guy is really serious. And I believe that is Anakin Skywalker. It's just the moment he opens his mouth and has to say all these cringy lines that George Lucas wrote, like, I don't like sand. I'm like, but that's not necessarily anything against Hayden. I think Hayden is a good choice for Anakin, and now he has a good script. Yes, I hear all you Obi-Wan Kenobi fans screaming at me like, he wasn't Obi-Wan Kenobi. I did not care for Obi-Wan Kenobi as a show. I understand that there are a lot of fans. It was just really not for me, really not what I wanted. And Hayden wasn't in it that much, really. I think in terms of what he did, it was okay. But what we have here in Ahsoka, that is where I'm like, oh my God, because he does everything in this. He does his Anakin in a way. He also does Clone Wars Anakin. And what I really loved hearing from him is that he actually went back to watch all of the animated stuff, Clone Wars and Rebels, saying that he really loved it. And it very much seems like he is channeling Matt Lanter a little bit, like the performance that Matt Lanter gave in the Clone Wars, which is my favorite version of Anakin. I see that in Hayden here, and I think that is exactly what I've always wanted from him, like to essentially show us that he is both Hayden Christensen's Anakin Skywalker and Matt Lanter's Anakin Skywalker, so that he can connect it, because I always felt there was a bit of a disconnect with the performance in the prequel movies versus the Clone Wars TV show. But here it comes together, and I am buying all of it. Not just that, by the way, also his dark side, because we, of course, see his dark side as Vader, and that is also great, and I love it. I thought this episode, from a perspective of Anakin Skywalker, was great, and considering he's one of my favorite characters, I'm like, thank you, Dave, for this. I've been waiting for this my entire life, I feel. So we cut back to Cetos, and we see, of course, Hera looking for Ahsoka and Sabine, but Carson comes in and he tells her that Senator Organa can only cover for so long. Leia. We get a direct mention of Leia, because for the people who might not completely understand that this is Leia, Leia, of course, took on the name Organa. I was a little confused at first because they didn't say Organa Solo, but that's Legends. That's not canon. But yeah, her dad is gone, has been gone for quite a while at this point. So there's no one else, I think, with the last name Organa. So Leia is covering for her. And that actually makes sense if you know Rebels, because we had that episode where Leia came in and helped the Ghost crew. And I think that's a cool connection to bring that back. But yeah, it's interesting that we get a mention of Leia, because I'm just curious, will we see her in some capacity? If she's covering for Hera, and if Hera is about to stand trial, then maybe we'll get like a little moment of Leia helping her out there. I think it's possible. Of course, we'll again have de-aging technology, and I really hope that it looks any kind of good. We'll have to wait and see for that. So Jason calls Hera to him because he feels something in the water. He can hear something. He can hear the lightsabers clash between Anakin and Ahsoka. And Hu Yang then finally mentions Kanan. I already said in my review for episode 3 that it desperately needed a mention. We finally got the mention. Very nice, very satisfying. And I think this was probably the right time to mention him, especially because for the audience who hasn't seen Rebels, they don't know who Kanan is. So it's good that they mention that, because Jason has the Force as well, and he's starting to use the Force here, and I'm very curious when we'll really see Jason use the Force and start his training, essentially, because I feel like that has to happen at some point, but when? So Jason tells Hera to listen to the waves as well, and it seems like she can actually hear it. Either that, or she's just being a mother and being like, okay, I believe you. Also because she's had a lot of experience with this in the past with her previous Ghost crew, with Ezra and Kanan. When Ezra and Kanan would say, this is how it is, this is what the Force is telling us, then Hera would be like, I got you, don't worry about it. But if Hera can hear it, then it's probably just more of the fact that, technically everyone has the Force. And if you just take a moment and listen, you can actually feel it somewhat. And that is something that we do see in Rebels with Hera, because there are just moments that Hera is completely caught up in the moment, completely focused on the mission as a rebel, and she kind of forgets about the world around her. And there are moments that she actually mentions that it's important sometimes to pay attention to what is happening around you and not to forget the little things in life as well, because sometimes that can be very important. And I think that is the lesson here as well. But anyway, in the world between worlds, Anakin is there to complete Ahsoka's training, and they start to duel. And the duel, I mean, it's like Hayden hasn't missed a beat at all. His lightsaber skills are still exactly what we know from Revenge of the Sith, really. And then at one point, Ahsoka's like, you can't teach me anything. And Anakin is like, no, I can. He cuts the bridge, and Ahsoka drops down into this orange, ready fog, and it's actually the young version of Ahsoka. The moment that I saw that, I was like, oh my God, it's the young version. I screamed it out like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, we're actually seeing this. And then we see clone troopers running at us. And this is the very first time ever in all of Star Wars that we see Phase 1 clone troopers. Because back in the day when Attack of the Clones released, George Lucas was like, CGI all of it. So we didn't have a single actual person in Phase 1 clone trooper outfit. And now we finally do, 21 years after the fact. It was just really cool to see that. And yeah, we got the Clone Wars, because not only do we see Phase 1 clone trooper, we see Anakin Skywalker in his Clone Wars getup with the in-between hair, like not as long as Revenge of the Sith, but not as short as Attack of the Clones, come at us. And I'm like, we are seeing live-action Clone Wars, and this is something that I think a lot of people never expected to see again, especially when in 2014 the show was prematurely canceled. We didn't expect to see any of that ever again. And I think a lot of people, myself included, were disappointed with that. Then we finally got season 7. It's like, okay, we at least got season 7, but now we're getting a live action flashback to it. And it seems like this is a flashback to Ryloth, because we see a lot of Twi'leks, which is interesting because we actually don't ever see Anakin and Ahsoka on the ground on Ryloth. We see them in the space battle, and of course, Anakin is flying over Ryloth with his speeder, but we never see them on the ground. Interesting, but it's what it is. I think this was not necessarily meant to be a specific callback to something in the Clone Wars. It's more so just to give people the vibe of like, it's the Clone Wars. There you go. But besides the fact that it's really cool to see all of the Clone Wars in live action, there is still a lesson here, and there's still a very personal story about Ahsoka going on, because she is very concerned and she feels guilty about all the dead clones that she feels she caused back in the Clone Wars, because of course she was a commander. She led them to their deaths in a way. And this was something that we already got in the Clone Wars. But of course, now years later, after reflecting and thinking, like, it just hits so much harder. And seeing it again, of course, that is going to hit. And it just seems like she thinks she fails as a Jedi, because Jedi are supposed to be keepers of the peace, not soldiers. But all she's done in her life is be a soldier, especially when she just got the role of Padawan. That was the Clone Wars happening, and then her training didn't completely finish, and she just carried on with her life, and then she needed to deal with the result of the Clone Wars. And then when she finally got back into it in Rebels, then she learns that her master turned to the dark side and is one of the biggest villains in the entire galaxy right now. It's like, I can understand that, Ahsoka has changed a lot because of that and became way more guarded. And that is why I think Ahsoka the Grey in the first couple of episodes was so guarded and was very different from what we know from her, because we can definitely see that changes later in the episode. And I'll get into that when we get there. And like, I just love the shot of Anakin walking into battle and then it flashing between Vader and him. Like, yes, I love it. So back on Cetos, we see, well, the X-Wings flying over the water, the Ghost as well. They are searching, of course. I'm very glad that Carson mentioned something about fuel, because I was already thinking, yeah, they already had a long journey here, and now just flying around, you're going to run out of fuel. I'm happy that he said something, but I assume they have enough, at least to make it to the point where they can get refueled. But Hera starts to question, like, if her disobedience was justified, and maybe she shouldn't have done it. But Huyang actually luckily tells her, like, you do things because you think they should be done. You care, and that is why people like you. And that is very much true. Thank you, Huyang, for saying that. That is exactly why I like Hera as well. She has very more consequence to do, and I really love that the show also has it, because I think Hera is a phenomenal character overall. Like, the way she can care about people, the way she can sass people, that is very reason she's a character. And I'm so happy to see her in live action like this. So Jason contacts her, and Chopper essentially tells her, like, get low, like really low. And the shot of the Ghost right above the water looks very cool, honestly. So we go back into the world between worlds, see Ahsoka a little further in the Clone Wars, actually at the very end of it, at the Siege of Mandalore, which is my favorite arc of all of the Clone Wars. And I saw the blue lightsabers, and I was like, wait, I recognize that. And then I see the Mandalorian helmet with the horns in it like Maul, and I'm like, that's the Siege of Mandalore in live action. And not just that, because like I start to recognize everything, like, oh right, the blue sabers, oh, her blue outfit, oh wait, clone troopers with her face painting on it. And I was like, in live action, yes. Yes. I was so happy to see this. I'm honestly just so excited to see all of this, because it's like, it's a dream come true. I never expected to see any of this, and we're getting it. So Anakin then mentions, like, oh, I don't know this battle. Well, Anakin, you know about the battle, because this is, sure, they had parted ways, as Ahsoka said, but this is the point where they had just parted ways. It's just a few hours afterwards that they actually agreed that Ahsoka would go to Mandalore while Anakin is off saving the Chancellor. That is the exact reason why Ahsoka is not in Revenge of the Sith, for people who haven't seen the Clone Wars show. Like, there's an actual good explanation, because on Mandalore, Ahsoka and Rex and that company is trying to get Maul on Mandalore. That's why they're separated throughout Revenge of the Sith. It's just surreal to see this still. I cannot get over this, honestly, because they also like have the shot of Anakin and Ahsoka just like in the Siege of Mandalore and the Clone Wars, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is great. I love it. And I also just have to give credit to Ariana Greenblatt, who plays the young Ahsoka, because I can already imagine that it's difficult to act through all this makeup and the entire Montreal Leku construction and this weird outfit. Like, sure, the outfit is accurate to the Clone Wars, but it still seems like, oh, they very much had to recreate that, and it might be a little uncomfortable. So she has all this stuff on her, and she has to act through that. And she is 16. Maybe at the time of shooting she was 15. I'm not entirely sure on that, but it just seems like she is very young at the time of filming, and the fact that she's able to act through that and not just act young Ahsoka. No, she is acting the spirit of older Ahsoka, just in the younger body. And I think that's very nuanced, and I think she does it perfectly. Like, it actually did remind me of Rosario Dawson's performance as well, and I thought that was just perfect. Oh, and by the way, I've seen some criticism of people online of saying like, "Oh, she's too young." She is exactly the right age, pretty much. Like, Ahsoka was between 14 and 17 during the Clone Wars. She was very young. She was a teenager. So the fact that they got a girl who's 16, 15 to play her, that is actually completely accurate to what it should be. So I think maybe because of the fact that animation doesn't make her look that young, and she doesn't sound that young, maybe at times makes people forget that she's actually that young, but she is. So I think, especially considering her age and what we've seen from her already, because she's in this and she's in Barbie and she's in Infinity War as young Gamora, I think she has a very bright career ahead of her, and I cannot wait to see more. I'm curious if we're going to see her again in any way, shape, or form as young Ahsoka. I'd love to. But Anakin and Ahsoka talk, and Anakin gets annoyed with her because Ahsoka doesn't seem to learn anything. So here he changes. He pulls out the red lightsaber, he turns around, and we see the Sith eyes. And at this point, I'm not going to lie, I was hoping to see them recreate the fight in Rebels in Twilight of the Apprentice. We didn't get that, but I'm okay with what we got anyway, because, he kicks her back into the world between worlds. They continue their fight. The fight is just so good. Also, the shot of Anakin again flashing between Vader and himself. It's like, oh my God, this is so good. I love this, honestly. And then after they fight a little, Ahsoka gets his red blade, puts it very close up against him, and we see her eyes turn a little Sith-like. Very much reminded me of Luke in Return of the Jedi and Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens, with like the light resembling maybe a dark side choice of some kind. But, it's poetry. It rhymes. That's cool. But of course, Ahsoka makes the wise decision. She says, "I choose to live," throws the lightsaber away, and Anakin returns to his normal form, and he's like, "There's hope for you yet. You're okay." And he walks off. The world between worlds changes to water, because Ahsoka, of course, is in the water on Cedos, and there she's found by the ghost. She gets pulled in, and this is where I quoted Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, like, "And I come back to you now, at the turn of the tide," because, of course, this is the moment that Ahsoka the Grey is gone and Ahsoka the White has risen, because it's very obvious what they were going for. I think everyone already figured this out like several episodes ago. Like, oh, right, we saw her in white robes at the end of Rebels. We're going to get to that point because right now she's gray. She's going to make that transition. And, it's like a good character arc for her throughout the season to learn another lesson, to come back. And all of a sudden, when she's back, she is just so much happier and more relaxed and more like the Ahsoka we know, and all is well. Also, I just want to quickly mention Kevin Kiner's score for the show, because already, I think I said before, I'm a humongous fan of Kevin Kiner's work in all of the Clone Wars and of Rebels. I think he does a fantastic job of scoring Star Wars, and I think he is pretty much the composer to take it over for John Williams, if we're going to have any. But yeah, this episode has so many good music cues at the right time, and it's just it's so satisfying to have all of this in live action, like have his themes from Rebels and Clone Wars translate into live action, and also him doing new versions of the themes that just work perfectly for the show. I am loving it. Kevin Kiner, thank you so much. One thing that I was very surprised to see is Ahsoka without her mantrol covered, because there usually is something between her head and her mouth holes to cover that, but This was the first time that we ever see it without that in all of Star Wars where she has appeared. And I instantly pointed out because it was very obvious to me. But I think it was just to show, she's cleansed, completely clean. She's reborn, of course. And I think this episode is a really good example of like, show, don't tell. You have a visual medium. You don't have to tell the audience what's happening. You can just show it, because everything that we see about Ahsoka's transition is visual. Of course, it is quite heavy-handed. I feel like it's pretty obvious because also from this point on, everything is very bright and light and white and all the other words that you can think of. But, I think it works. Like, it is show, don't tell. And I'm happy with that. And I think it's handled well. Like, sure, a little bit too obvious. At least it's not a J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie, even though it did remind me of that a little bit, but it's never like a lens flare going on, like really overexposed. But yeah, it's very clear that from this point on, we have a different version of Ahsoka. She acts differently, and it was very clear to me the moment that she's like, oh, Jason's here. Like, the way she acted that out was very dreamy and way more relaxed, and like she was surprised and she was happy about it, and then she hugs him. So, like, you can clearly see this is the Ahsoka that we've been building towards, the more fun one. And I also just feel very vindicated by the fact that I was very much like on board with her performance in the first couple of episodes. I thought Rosario Dawson played Ahsoka the Grey very well, the more guarded version of her. Because now, the moment that she changes, you can see the change in her appearance, the change in her mannerisms and everything, and the way she says things, does things. It's like you can clearly see that. And Rosario Dawson is the right part for Ahsoka, and we just needed to wait for it a little bit. So, I think the lesson here is be patient. Don't judge a book by its cover. Maybe just go into a book, read 100 pages or so, and then form your opinion if it's indeed what you thought it was. So Ahsoka steps out of the ship and meets with Hera, Huyang, and Jason. Jason starts asking questions, and Hera's like, Jason, why don't you go off with Huyang and let the adults talk over here? Very much a mother moment, it seemed. And of course, Hera wants to know what happened to Sabine. Well, Ahsoka has half of the map. And then Ahsoka uses a force ability that us canon fans know as psychometry. Psychometry is an ability that we've seen in canon before. We've seen two Jedi use it. One was Quinlan Vos, and the other was Cal Kestis. Quinlan Vos is in the Clone Wars animated show. Cal Kestis, of course, is the protagonist from the Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor games. And it was explained to us that it was a very specific, unusual ability that specific Jedi have. How does Ahsoka have that? She was never set up to have that ability. Did she learn it at any point? I'd like them to go into that a little bit, because I do feel a little bit cheated, considering that for me, I was always under the impression that psychometry was a specific ability that specific Jedi could use. I fear we might just never get an explanation, but I would like to. So as Ahsoka is figuring out this map, Hera gets called by Carson, and Carson says that a New Republic fleet is underway, and I am just completely fed up with the New Republic right now. Hera is a general, has been a general since the rebellion, has been a general for 10 years at this point. She is smart enough to make her own decisions, and I think the New Republic should let her. Like, sure, the New Republic is not necessarily a military organization, but still, considering that she's a general, she's important, and she knows her shit. Like, the New Republic should just let her do what she does. All she did was take her own ship and a couple of X-Wing fighters who wanted to go with her, because, of course, all the X-Wing fighters are very aware that that was not an approved mission. They went with her by themselves because they wanted to follow her because she's a great leader. So why in the fuck is the New Republic so annoyed with her? Like, shut up. You have nothing here. She is 100% right. Of course, the New Republic doesn't know that she is right about this, but the New Republic should trust her enough. And the fact that they want to suspend her command, and that Mon Mothma says that to her, yeah, the fact that Hera just is like, I don't agree with that. Fuck y'all. Like, go away. This is stupid. And it just shows the New Republic is incapable of action. And it very much reminded me of a quote from The Phantom Menace.
This body is not capable of action. I suggest new leadership is needed.
Honestly, yeah, just get new leadership, get people in there who know their shit, because just trust your generals. Hera is capable enough, you should trust her. So Ahsoka tells Hera she has a way to find Sabine, and they go into the sky, and yeah, this was what I was already expecting a couple of episodes ago. They're probably going to use the Purrgil to get there, because of course the bad guys have the hyperspace ring, and they will use the Purrgil to get there. So Ahsoka goes onto the wing, and when she steps onto the wing in her full white outfit, looks really good on her. Like, this is Ahsoka the White. Awesome to see that. And she tries to convince a Purrgil to take her. In the meantime, the New Republic fleet comes in, and I really just love how Carson is able to stall them. Like, I think the actor plays it out really well. It was really funny to see that interaction. And yeah, in the meantime, of course, Ahsoka is trying to convince his Purrgil. Jason sees this, and Jason, of course, he's very excited because he is being introduced to the Force now, and he definitely has a connection, and he feels like he could do more. Just the excitement that he has on his face is really fun and really cute to see. And honestly, like, to me, the way that they use the Purrgil on the show is perfect. I already said in previous reviews, when we were first introduced to the Purrgil, I did not care about them. When we got them at the end of Rebel Season 4, I was still like, this is how we end the season. This is how Thrawn gets defeated. Okay, I suppose. But now it's like, wow, the Purrgil, it's something. It's honestly really cool. So Ahsoka convinces the Purrgil. They go into the mouth, and then Huyang is like, wait, will they take us to the galaxy? Will they take us where we need to go? And Ahsoka's like, I don't know. Like, we'll wait and see. We'll have to just wait and see for that. It was just funny to see Ahsoka like this, because yeah, she hasn't been acting like this, and she's like, we'll just go with the flow. They'll take us somewhere. We don't know, but at least they'll take us somewhere. It's better than here. Then the Purrgil take off. They go out of the atmosphere. They encounter the New Republic fleet, and the New Republic fleet is just looking like, what is happening here? I really hope that this at least makes some case for Hera, because of course Hera will have to face the New Republic without Ahsoka now, without really any proof. And I really just hope that they're able to at least make somewhat of a case, because suspending her command would be absolute bullshit in my opinion. However, I do have the feeling that what's going to happen is that at one point Thrawn is going to come in, and we'll have a New Republic fleet, and Hera is also there, and Hera's like, wait, we need to get out of here, and the New Republic fleet is like, well, it's just one Star Destroyer. And then Thrawn just does what he does. He takes out the entire fleet, and Hera just looks in awe like, shit, this happened. And then she gets out of there. That's my prediction in terms of what's going to happen there. But yeah, Ahsoka apologizes. Hera is just like, well, Jason is too young to travel to another galaxy. But then I am very glad that they give the line, may the Force be with you to Hera. I think that was very fitting in the moment. That really needed to be said right here. And then the Purrgil jump into hyperspace. I assume that a lot of people who have never seen Rebels were like, what the hell just happened? But yeah, that's the episode, and I love it. I so love this show. My God. This is just becoming one of my favorite things in anything Star Wars. Doesn't matter if it's movies or TV shows. This show right here is why I love Star Wars. It's everything that I love about Star Wars, and every single episode just gets better and better, and I want more, and oh, I'm in love. I'm truly in love with this show. The thing is that this past week I had the morning shift, and I had the morning shift as well a couple of weeks ago. And with my morning shift, I wake up at 4:40 a.m. because I need to be at work at 5:45 a.m. But with Ahsoka, I wake up at 3:30 and watch the episode just to make sure that I have watched the episode before I go to work. Also because I don't want to be spoiled, but I need to see it as soon as I possibly can. So yeah, I'll wake up for it. And that is my dedication to the show. I just love it. But enough of what I thought about this episode and how much I loved it. I'm just curious, what did you think Are you maybe not a particularly big fan of the show? Do you have issues with it? Please let me know any of your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. And also let me know if you agree on the world between worlds thing that I had like a complete theory about. As always, thank you for watching my video. If you like what you saw, please like the video, subscribe to my channel. Also follow me on social media. And until my next video, may the force be with you.